today we're going to chat around the applicant tracking system, what it is, what it means to you, how can it help you to get your to optimize your job search for Canada. And it is pretty much the same. An applicant tracking system is throughout the world, so the principles are the same and can be applied wherever ATS system is used. So I'm going to take us through. Just move this over here. Great, okay. So what we're going to go through today would be, we're going to talk around about who am I, who is Howzit, what is the applicant tracking system, look at some statistics, some tips, and then also have a look at the training that's coming up, and then just putting out some information to connect with me. So who is Howzit? So you guys must have heard about Howzit before. I'm part of a team. We are just a bunch of incredible lekker people, and we've been there. We've done the journey. We've all taken the journey the same way that you have done. Some of us as short as 6 months ago, and some of us as long as 12 to 20 years ago. So we've got together and we kind of had a look at seeing how can we help immigrants coming into this into Canada. How can we help you settle, and how can we get to support you in what support you might need. We've been through the same challenges. We understand what you might struggle with, and we're really passionate to share that with you. We help people in various, specifically in the Howzit platform. We help small businesses that many of the company or many people that moved over start their own business, whether it's a small business or it could be anything from selling your rusks, starting up a business. And we've integrated on Howzit. We've got this platform where we help you to get your name out there. We also have the dedicated businesses such as immigration, where we've got Canada Abroad in Designs, which is my own business, where we help you with resumes. We've got financial advisors helping you to bring your funds over, your pension funds, the transition, your wealth planning. We've got guys helping you with settlement. We've got accommodation services helping you with your property, and then people like Andrea, which you know is also part of our team. So we're really just a bunch of great people. Go and follow us on Howzit if you're not doing so at the moment. We've got some fantastic blogs where people are sharing it, sharing their life. We've got a phenomenal one that's come up, which you guys will love, especially for the guys that's still in South Africa, where Claire, that's on this call, she's writing her incredible journey around starting from boerewors to beaver tails. Does anybody know what a beaver tail is? It's not a real beaver tail, so don't be afraid. A beaver tail, go and Google it. It is the best thing on this planet. Between two best things about Canada, the one is poutine, so it's the best slop chips you'll ever found, and the second best one is beaver tails, and it's like a fried dough, and it comes up with these toppings, chocolate toppings or cinnamon and sugar. It's phenomenal. It is so fattening. It's scary, but it's the best thing on this planet. So it's really cool. So Claire shares her story as they are immigrating from South Africa into Canada. You would love to hear that. She'll give some tips and tricks of what she's got. We've got someone writing about his experiences when he lived in Africa. We have got tips around cost of living in Canada. We have got financial answers. We're talking about how to help with your resume, what to think about. So there's lots of topics on there. If there's one that we haven't covered yet, let us know and we will write some content for you. We're there to help you to integrate. So who am I? My name is Melanie, and I'm the co-owner of the Howzit group that I've just explained to you guys, and where we help people to settle into Canada. My team specifically helps individuals to write their resumes, their cover letters, set up their profiles. I've done a couple of you guys sitting on this call. I've had the great privilege of working with you. I'm also the owner of a company called Designs Creative Thinking that I used to have in South Africa for about 12 years. And we're a marketing agency that's now based in Toronto. And we help businesses, entrepreneurs, individuals, etc., to help get their LinkedIn profile, their visibility, and their marketing up to date. Take a note of my LinkedIn details at the bottom. I connect best on LinkedIn. That's where you'll find me. That's where you'll find my news. And that's where I'd love to connect with you and share some of my information on there. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. So let's have a look at the applicant tracking system and what that means and what does it mean for you. So is everybody still good? Just checking in. Everyone fine? Give me a thumbs up. Are we good? Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. So if we have a look at the applicant tracking system, when you start applying for a job, do you really know what's happening at the back end? You apply. How many of you guys have applied for job after job? I hear this often where people say to me, we've applied for 60 jobs, but we haven't heard a thing back yet. And you kind of go, but why am I not, why is nothing happening? So it's because there's something called the applicant tracking system. And this system is kind of like, it helps companies to manage the resumes that's coming in to their company. It starts sifting the resumes, and it really kind of starts passing the information so that the system can tell who has got the best resume or who's the best person fit for that job. Okay. If you're a strong match, and depending on the criteria that's been set up, you will pass through the applicant system. If you're not if your system or your score is not high enough, it will just simply bypass you, and you will you will hear crickets for the rest of the time, because you'll hear absolutely nothing. Your resume will just go, and you kind of go, but I don't understand why. Okay, so today we're going to dig a little deeper. We're going to dive in and have a look at the mystery around this ATS system. What does it mean? How we can get through some strategies to help you to get your resume to improve on that matter. So we have got someone on mute. Can you guys just check who's on mute and just or not on mute, and please just mute yourselves. So let's have a look at what's happening at the moment in the system. Okay, so they get an average 250 job applications a day. Okay, that's what's happening. Out of that 250, okay, only 4 to 6 people will be will be sent out an application or an invitation to be contacted for an interview. So that's why out of that you need your resume to stand out, and that's why you need to convert your resume from a South African resume or from a resume from whichever country you're coming from into a Canadian format. So the corporate organizations, 98% of them use the system. There's many ATS systems. It's not just one specific system. It's a system that they buy and then they customize it for themselves. So if almost all of them are using them, it makes sense to start understanding how the system works and how can you get your resume out there. Okay. They get between 50 and 75,000 resumes on average. Okay. Per week, depending on the job applications that they've got, these bigger organizations. So you need to make your CV stand out, your resume stand out. It needs to stand different. You need to be different to the rest that's out there, which is quite interesting, because you'll see as what we are going through on the system now, what many people do is they think, okay, I need to get my resume to stand out. So I'm going to need to put in some graphics in there, and I'm going to need to put in, some fancy logos, and I need to put in some fancy photos and things like that. But yet we're saying that even though you need to stand out, yet you need to simplify. So we're going to go through that system and have a look at what that looks like. Okay. Reality also is that 75% of the resumes will not be seen by a person. So that gives you a 25% chance at the end of the day that your resume will be seen by someone. Okay, so that's why we need to have a look at what that means. Okay. It's great to kind of know that there is this ATS, but you need to understand how it works, okay, and what you are up against. If you can understand it, you can adjust your resume, and you can then start increase your chances to get through the system and actually get your resume in front of a person to look at that. It's not like in the old days where they used to receive the resumes, print them out, and go through them one by one. The system automates everything. So again, 75% chance of your resume not being seen by a person. So that's why we need to get you through the system and help you. So what does the ATS look for? It looks for 4 main things. These are not the only 4 things, but these are main things. And if you start changing your resume and change the way that you apply for jobs, according to these, it will just increase your chances. So they look at the keywords. We're going to go through a lot more detail. Okay. We need to know that you need to have more prominent keywords and buzzwords from the job description that, you know, is in the, starting at your job description, that it's right front and center, keyword rich on your resume. Okay. We're going to go through that, the keyword section in a lot more detail. It looks at your title. Okay, it checks if your title that you've applied for, does the title in your resume, does that same title come up in your resume versus what the application says? Because if you're going to call it a plumber in South Africa, but in Canada, it's called something else, it's not going to pick it up. Okay, so we need to go kind of, it needs to look at the titles, and it looks at how often and how it's worded in your resume, and it tries to pick up those keywords on that side as well. Okay, so we'll go through it in more detail around your title, but if you come through the system and it says to you job title, have a look at the job title, and if it's different to what you've got, but it still says the same thing, okay, and it is okay for you to change your job title on your resume to match what the job description asks you for. If you're doing the job and it says it's the same thing, but because in South Africa it's called something different, you know, you will find that you can do that as long as it's legal and as long as you are doing the job and you're qualified to do the job. It is fine to do that. Okay, it will help the system understand it, and it will help you to pass and get your score. The ATS is all about the score. The higher your score, the better your chances of going through and your resume being given to the specific person to look at. Number 3 is the degree. If you don't have a degree and the ATS system asks you for a degree, if it says it wants a degree and you don't have that degree, then it's not worth your while to apply on the system, and you might need to find a different way, and one of those ways might be to network. But the system automatically will give you a lower score, and the scoring rate. So again, then you've got less of a chance to get through to the system. So if it is a degree to apply position, then if you don't have that degree, then you might it's kind of like a waste of time, if you know what I mean, because the system will just kick you out. Okay. As I said, there are alternative ways of networking, and that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at one of our next sessions. Lastly, the ATS system will look at the structure of your resume. Okay, if it's got fonts and graphics, and it's again, that's why they also ask you that your resume needs to be a very short version in Canada, because it goes through that system. So if it's not in a specific structure, then the ATS won't pick it up, and it will decline it. Okay, so the best is just keep it simple, keep the answers in an understandable format, keep your language in an understandable language that the system will be able to pick up, and again, that it's keyword rich. So let's go through. The first one that we'll be having a look at is the keywords. It's just to maximize your odds of beating the ATS system, and your keywords will really make the difference in terms of being and going through to the system. Okay. If you start weaving in some of the keywords into your resume, the ATS system will see your resume as a good fit. Okay, it will improve your odds and you will go through. Okay, and then that's when you start being when it sends you through as a strong candidate to the recruiter. Okay, so here's a tip for you guys in terms of having a look at what do you do with your resume and versus the job description. When you start looking, one of the things that we do when a client approaches us to say, look, I want you to redo my resume, is we say, okay, go back and give us 3 job descriptions or 3 job applications that you've seen that you like, and you say, okay, I'm a good fit for this job. And we say, bring that back to us so that we can see if your resume matches what you are wanting to apply for, because we want to make sure that you've got the keywords in that would typically go into this. So if you are doing your resume yourself, or even if you have got your resume from someone that's rewritten your resume for you, print out your resume and print out 3 copies, 3 different job descriptions, and take, or you can have one then if you just want to do one, then it doesn't matter. But the more you do this, the easier it will help you to understand what is really required from a Canadian resume and a Canadian job application for yourself. So what you do is you print out the job application, take 3 highlighters, 3 different color highlighters, and you start going through your through that job description. And you have a look at the hard skills that they're saying to you, the specific skills that you need, and you highlight them with a specific color, and you go through that bit by bit. Okay, then you go through the second one, which is the softer skills. Now, soft skills is very important in Canada. Okay, so soft skills would be stuff like collaboration and troubleshooting and those kind of things. Okay, so go back and take a highlighter and a different color highlighter and then highlight the soft skills. And then you look at that job application again, lastly, and you'll look at action verbs that they're talking about. So leading and developing and those kind of things, and you put that in. And then once you've highlighted these keywords, and then you compare your resume against them and have a look and say, okay, which of these keywords that I've highlighted, are they in my resume? Some of them, many of the keywords you'll find if you do this with 2 or 3 job applications, you'll find that they are similar. So you will have these keywords woven into your resume in any case. So it shouldn't be an exercise that you have to do again and again and again, because you will see which keywords overlap all the time. And you'll try and find them. But as you adjust your resume for a specific job, you might want to weave in those specific keywords, okay? So another idea to have a look at that is if you look at the job application and for a specific company, you go, I really want to apply for a job in this one, and you're still not sure if your resume has got the right that job that you're applying for. If someone is on LinkedIn that's got that job description, and go and have a look at what they've got on their LinkedIn profile, and see if they are using the same keywords, if they are using soft skills, if they're using hard skills, and action verbs. Are they using that? And you'll be able to pick up some specific keywords of that. I want to caution you, when you look at LinkedIn, it doesn't mean, Canada is very focused on LinkedIn, and I had a discussion. My husband is in IT, and they're busy recruiting at the moment for a strong team, and we sat down and had a discussion around this. And this is something that is really quite happen quite often. Is that he says that they're not even actually looking at the resumes that's coming through the system actually even anymore. They are actually just going through LinkedIn and having a look at the LinkedIn profiles. So if your LinkedIn profile is not up to date, they're kind of going, it's a no-go. You know what, they almost stop there. So that's kind of like a side point, but which means that your LinkedIn profile needs to be quite strong. I always advocate for that. But the thing is that when you look at a LinkedIn profile of a Canadian, you will find that the Canadians use LinkedIn quite effectively, and their resumes or their LinkedIn profile will be up to date. So when you do this research on a company or a specific individual within this company, you will find that their LinkedIn profile will most likely be up to date and they will be fairly active. But don't use that as the be all and the end all of your example if you start working and looking for a job. Rather look at the job description, but if you want to have a good idea, you will find pretty much you should be able to find someone within that, in that company. But also do yourself the favor and have a look at someone in the industry. So, to see what they in your industry in the same job that they're doing, what are they using, so that you can get a better understanding of what they're looking for. Again, just use your common sense when you go through this. Have a look. Quite important is if they are talking about acronyms. So, for instance, if you've got something in your job description that's, for instance, like a PMP, if your PMP qualification or job description says PMP, which is a project management professional, be careful not to just have PMP in, but you could have PMP and project management professional in. So you've got to have both in there so that the system can pick it up. And it can understand that. And then this is also related, and I've highlighted this in red, is saying South African acronyms. the guys don't, you know, the language that we have in other countries is not the same as in Canada. So the system will pick that up. If it doesn't understand, if you've got specific keywords in your industry, just check that those keywords are not just South African related. If they are just, then the system won't know. So if you don't tell the system that this is related and it could be in a Canadian context, then you need to make the system aware of what's happening with that, okay? So last thing I want to mention around this is if you want to write your resume, this is more a tip around the resume writing more than the ATS itself. But if your keywords that you've got there relates and can show experiences to the job application, that will help to put your resume in front of the recruiter and highlight you. So kind of sharing, you know, how you've the skills around that keyword and how it's been explained and some experiences around that, it will help. So a unique job history on why, and just kind of explaining why you would be the perfect person for that job. So you weave in the story within your system. So it's not just a bunch of keywords that you're throwing at it, but it needs to be a readable format as well. If you have a look at it. So remember the ATS system. Some systems will, depending on how it's been set up, it will say to you, it either looks at specific skills or strengths within that resume, okay, depending on what the system has been set up to check in and check for. So you need to just check that your keywords are stretched throughout your resume, so that it can highlight the skills within that. So based on just the keywords of what I've spoken about here, you'll see it's not just a case of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping and seeing which one is sticking. Okay, so the fact of saying I'm sending out 80 CVs and I'm not getting one response. And now I'm saying to you, okay, but you need to, first of all, you need to change those keywords and you need to kind of look at that. You go, where am I going to find the time if I'm applying for jobs, you know, to really get to such level of detail? The reality of this is that the more you highlight and the more you get focused on a specific job, the better it is, rather than just sending out resume after resume after, you know, applying job after job after job. Rather look for the ones that you know you are qualified in, get to understand the company, get to know what the requirements are. Make sure that your resume states exactly what the requirements are on the job application, so that the job application would be able to increase your points to get you through onto the system, take you through. So going into the formatting, if you have a look at your resume, the most important thing is to keep it simple. Whatever you do is just take out all the formatting that you've got and start with a clean, simple format. It is the words that count. It's not necessarily the format. This is not where they're going to be looking at that, okay? So, and this will also help, especially if you start tweaking your resume for every job application that you're doing. You want to keep it simple. You don't want to have tables and columns in places and every time adjust something, because you're going to tweak your resume as you go along. So you would want to have it simple so that when you go in, it's not difficult for this table suddenly start moving and it changes your whole format of your resume and you need to spend hours to get this thing just to look perfect. The system is not going to go through that. So looking specifically at tables and columns, okay, the ATS needs to start with your resume and it needs to go through the whole resume and pick up certain words and pick up certain so the keywords and the phrases within that to say yes, you tick those boxes. So how the system works, it reads from top to bottom, left to right. Okay, so if you have columns and tables in, the system doesn't know where the words are being put in, so it gets confused with the wording and it might just miss some of the keywords that you've got in there. So it won't read it and it won't segment it, because it'll literally pull out that information and say, okay, in the experience section, it needs these words and for that specific job, and it pulls it out and it puts it into the system and it starts putting this data in. And if that data is missed because it's in a table in a format that it couldn't read, it doesn't make sense. So then it will simply bypass that information and it will be blank and your score would be lower. Whereas if it could pull it out, put it into the data that it needs, your score automatically increases. Okay. So try and keep away from tables and columns. Okay, headers and footers. Many people use headers and footers to put your contact information in. So your phone numbers, etc. You know, they kind of squeeze it in at the bottom or at the top so that people can always see it. The ATS system does not read a header or a footer. Okay, so whatever you put in there, it will miss it. So if your name and your phone number or your address or whatever is picked up on the header and the footer, and it doesn't read it, it means that when it fills in the information in the system, it misses your name. So there's your application and it's got no name, or your, even more importantly, your email address. So if you then pass through the system, but it can't see your email address, then it's the system won't know to take you through to the next round of that section. Okay. Somebody is not on silent. Sandy, I think it's you. Can you just, I don't know who is not on mute. Can we just check? So if we look at simple the titles as well, so we love to kind of just make it make our resume stand out a little bit, and many times I know as a web developer I get this often where people don't want to use just the contact us on their menu bar, but they want to change it to reach out to us, or they want to have some fancy words for it, or even kind of like who I am and what I do and those kind of things. And the same thing applies here, is keep it simple, because the system will check for key skills summary. So if you're saying who I am versus, or what I do versus what my key skills are, then the system won't know to pick up the summary information under summary because you've called it who I am. And it will just simply miss that data. It will just pass over that data. And again, you will lose the system allocating points to you. Okay. The same goes for if you're from a perspective of images and charts and graphics. So if you have got a photo on the resume, let's say again, maybe on the top, you've got a photo of yourself and you've got a pretty name, you know, your name on top of it or something like that. The system will not be able to read the photo. Okay, so if your name is on top of that photo embedded in the photograph, it won't be able to read it. So it misses your name. Okay. Your score will be lower from that matter. So if you are someone like, I know that many of the developers and the visual artists, what they tend to do is, if you've got a list of key skills, for instance, and you've got something like, if you are mentioning within a set of programs that you can use. So let's say, for instance, you do the whole Adobe suite, and you're saying you have got InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, and you've got the skills, and you say what your proficiency on that skill level is, and you show, you know, like a little bar graph, and on the Illustrator it's like 50%, and on the Photoshop it might be 85%. The system will not be able to read that. Okay, so it will just say, you know what, when it says the requirement would needs to be, you know, for the Adobe suite, it will not pick it up. And it would say, no, you don't qualify for this position because you don't mention the Adobe suite as it is. And it's the same thing for any software packages or any proficiency. You'll see that many resumes has got that in. Leave it out, it's not going to be able to pick that up. Okay. Bullet points. It's great if you can use bullet points. Keep to simple bullet points. Don't use bullet points within bullet points, you know, sub menu within sub menu. I know South Africans, we love bullet points. We absolutely love bullet points. This is a time to maybe keep it simple. It can be used in your accomplishments or your qualifications, which is fine. That's not a problem. But when you start having sub menus or sub bullets of bullets, it's just, the system gets confused with that, and it will throw out that system. Okay. On the resume itself, people are asking, do I add in my ID number, or female, male, you know what? Do I need to put my age in? Do I need to put if I'm a smoker or a non-smoker? I don't know if that is still a requirement in South Africa. It's not a requirement here at all. So you do not need to put any personal information in there at all on your resume. So keep it simple. What the system, however, will pick up on is to put in an address. Okay, so it will pick up if it says that this position is in Ontario. Okay, you don't have to put in your specific address, but if you put there Ontario, Canada, or you put in there Canada as a residency, it will be able to pick that up and saying, okay, great. If it specifically requires residents to be in, in Toronto, and it says, okay, great, this guy's already in Toronto, you know what, and that address is there, then I'll pick it up and it will be one of your score marks. So that will help a lot in terms of adding that in. File type is very important. So if you, if your resume, some people's resumes are in PowerPoint and in other formats, it would be easier to check what specifically the system asks you for and give it to them in that format. It would typically be around either a PDF or a doc or a docx, so that the system, the ATS system, would be able to extract the information and give it through. You can have a PDF or a different version of your resume at hand. I know many of the professionals, I'm talking about CEOs and those kind of guys, they have got PowerPoint templates and PDFs and other versions of their resume. So that's okay. You can use that when you've got your personal request, when you've got your actual face-to-face interview, to use that. But for the system and for the application on the ATS, it's best to kind of put it into the format, which is 9 times out of 10, it is a .doc or a docx that it applies for. Fonts, try and keep to the simple fonts, 2 max if you can, to create consistency. So you can have a mix between a serif and a sans serif font. That's not a problem. But also try and stick to Google fonts. So if you're going to be using fancy fonts to separate your resume, if it can't be read within that, it will simply not be picked up. So try and stick to a simple font that could be readable. Arial is always an easy one. If you Google fonts, literally, it will tell you which fonts they are. Those are the ones that you'll see in Canva and, in Word and those ones. Those are the ones that I would recommend you use. Keep it simple. It will help you stand out a bit. It will help you to kind of give your resume some visual element to it. But yeah, try and create consistency so that let's say your headers might be in one font in a certain size and your paragraphs might be in a different font in a different size, and you can play with sizes, but it's consistent that all your paragraphs are the same font size, etc. Graphics, I spoke about that. Don't embed anything. You don't have to put your photo. It's not necessary for Canadian resumes and Canadian applications to have a photo on. The system won't read it. And also LinkedIn, it'll be picked up on LinkedIn that you've got a photo. So don't worry too much about that. It's not necessary at all. Okay. So if we have a look at, once you've got all of it and understanding, and I've gotten through some of the ATS applications, I'm going to just have a quick stop here for a second or two. Do we have any questions around what I've said? Any specific questions? Anyone? It's a very quiet group today. Does it make sense? Cool, awesome. Thanks, Anil. So if we have a look at what types, now we've got on and say, okay, great. So how does the format of your resume? I'm not going to spend too much time on around what the format needs to look at, but there are different ways of adding your resume, of the look and feel of your resume that we can have a look at. And the first one would be reverse chronological. So it says, as I've got on the presentation, you start with your most recent job. And that's typically what we have in South Africa, is you start with your most recent job and you work back in terms of how you explain that. And the ATS system will pick up, just so that you know, the ATS system will pick up all 3 of this. So it's not really a major issue. It just depends on the preference of how the system has been set up. And then again, when your resume has passed through the system and a recruiter picks up your resume, which one would be easier for him or her to read? And that's why we're kind of going through this. So it starts, the second one is a functional resume. Okay, so it really just gives your key accomplishments and your skills, and that's at the top. And then briefly, it mentions your job description below that. So a lot more detail is focused around what you've accomplished and what you can do versus within that job description. It's not, this is my least favorite resume to do in that manner, because people would look at your job description, especially your latest job or two, depending on how long you've been at this specific job, to see if you fit the bill of what they are looking for into the system. Margie is asking, do we have to use the past tense for action verbs? If it is a job that you are not in at the moment, yes, you can use the past tense on those. But if you're presently in a job, then you can use the action verb within that. But when it is, let's say you've done a project and it's an achievement that you've done for action verbs, then obviously it would be, because the project is completed and you've achieved something, then it would be in the past tense. It doesn't pick it up. It's not that finicky, as long as it's relatable. Okay, great. And then the last one is the hybrid resume, which looks at both of them. Okay, it's got some key skills and experience in that. Okay, and that's the one where the recruiter will have a look at what you've achieved. Okay, and it's in right and up front, and it tells them what you are capable of, what you know, that you can do the job. Okay, it's also the top fold, the top third of your resume is also the most important fold of that, and that's what will keep the guys' attention and wanting them to read more when they physically sit with your resume in front. So that's why you would want to have your value proposition right up on the front side of that. Okay, and then it goes into reverse chronological format, again going from your recent job and working back, but there's a bit more detail into that. Okay, and that's the one that we kind of use. Okay, it sees from a recruiter perspective, they see everything up front, you know, your achievements at what you've done. Okay, and see what you can do as a professional. And then the system as well, it reads it and it scans the format, so it's quite easy to use. Okay, you can use either of them or any of the three, it doesn't matter. It's just that if you're going to use, you know, let's just say the reverse chronological order, it doesn't state your achievements, then people will kind of scroll over it and go, yes, but you know what, that doesn't tell me something more about this person and what they've achieved. So it might just kind of, you lose the impact. Again, have a look at which one fits your requirement, and also have a look at a couple of resumes of people in your industry, if you've got the opportunity to do so, and have a look at the job description. It will really highlight that a lot for you to see which one would be best. But in Canada, one that we've used and the one that when we do resumes is the hybrid resume function. So there is a difference between normal applicant tracking systems and the Canadian one. And I've mentioned the three that you can see at the bottom here. Okay, and it's quite important for people coming in from South Africa or any other country to have a look at why is it different and what does that mean. Okay, so it works exactly the same as any other applicant tracking system, but it does take in consideration words and spelling. Okay, and what we are saying, and if it doesn't pick that up, then it's a difference. So if you are working, again, if you're working with a product, and in South Africa it used to be called aluminium, and in Canada it's called aluminum. I had to think about that word, aluminum. So it's just the spelling of that. The ATS will not pick that up. So it would be critical, depending on the keywords that you are using, that those are in Canadian format. You know, and then the same goes for the language of itself. So in South Africa, using, you know, robot, yeah, again, you know, we use traffic light. So if these keywords, have a look at the keywords that you've got in your resume. If you've highlighted the keywords in the beginning, the soft skills, the hard skills, and the what's his name, the action verbs, then you'll see what those keywords are. Have a look if they are Canadian, in Canadian language and in Canadian spelling, S versus Z. Okay, so in Canada we use the Z. when we say specialized, and those kind of things. So if you pick up on those keywords, and then in your industry, if you are highly specialized, then it's really important to ensure that you picked up those keywords, that they are in the Canadian format, and again, that they are highlighted in your resume. Okay. And then the system in Canada is definitely, as I said in the beginning, they look at softer skills. What, to kind of, how are you changing, how are you working as a team, how you are growing, those kind of things, and so it's really important to have a look that you can explain the softer skills within your resume, and within when you sit in front of someone, to explain the soft skills that you have and why it sets you apart from the rest. Okay, so when we write our resume, that's one of the important things that we have a look at, and I can detail that for you a bit more around what those softer skills would look at. They would be different as per the industry, and we can have a look at more detail for you around your specific requirement. So a couple of tips, and then we can hand over to Q&As that I've put together and said, let's have a look at what to help you just to get your resume out there, besides the ones that I've mentioned now. Okay, so one that's important, it really is critical, is to start building your network now. If you are in South Africa, and you're planning to come over, I always recommend start at least 6 months before you start, to understand who's in your industry in this area. The way that I typically recommend is, I say, have a look at South Africans that's in Canada at the moment, and start connecting with those people in LinkedIn. They might not be in Toronto if you're going to Toronto, or they might be in Vancouver, or you might be going to Saskatchewan, or wherever it might be. Still, there are South Africans, and they've connected, and they've gone through this process. And especially if they are in your industry, have a look at those guys, because they will be able to tell you which companies to look out for, how they have adapted their resume, what they have done. Your network, you start fresh over here. It is tough to start a network. You then realize how important your network was when you were in South Africa, and start building that network on something like LinkedIn. It really is important that you really use it here. Start having a look at building first and second degree connections on your LinkedIn profile. So start connecting to have a list, and we can chat about that in our next session, is have a list of let's say the top, if it's a organization, the top 100 organizations that you see in Canada, that would have positions like you have got. Start having a look if you can find people that you can connect with. So people that's got the same job as you in those companies. Start following the companies. Start having a look if there's people that might be connections that you have, that's working at those companies. It's important for you, because that way your resume can bypass the ATS system completely, because you've got a connection. Cliff's asking, how would I find ex-South Africans in my job field now living in Canada? If you have, depending on what LinkedIn profile you have, you can separate them according to, I know that mine tells me, if I look at a company, it will tell me I can search in Canada specifically. So what I've done since I've moved here is I started looking at who's in Canada, that that I've connected with my South African connections here, and who are their connections, and I started connecting with their connections. And 9 times out of 10, you can pick up on the on the name or the surname that they're South African, and I start connecting with them that way, and that's how we built them. And that's how you start building your first and second connections. Does that help you, Cliff? To so you can separate them according to country, and then having a look at who's in that. So we have got many people within the financial industry, for instance. So we have a look at the financial, I pick up 1 or 2 people, and yes, you can stalk them. So we look at 1 or 2 people that I know that's in that industry, and I specifically reached out to them and saying, you know what, John, you're in the financial industry. I'm in the financial industry and I'm coming over, or you know what, I am here right now, love to hear your thoughts. And then I have a look at his connections, and the people are very open to say to you, you need to meet this one, that one, that one. The network in Canada is a lot smaller than what you would find someone in New Zealand or Australia with all the South Africans there. But you will pick up who is South African, and you'll start building that network. And they will connect with you the more that they see that you are from South Africa as well. You will pick them up a lot easier. It's important to ensure that your LinkedIn profile, so I said that on LinkedIn and on the online presence, is you need to start updating that. So whatever keywords you've now done on your resume, make sure that those keywords are on your LinkedIn profile, they are on your job description, on your title, the headline that you've got on LinkedIn. Make sure it's there. Make sure that you've got those keywords in right throughout your LinkedIn profile. Make sure that your profile is up to date. Make sure that you're active on that. If you are, I know you'll see that there's a person called Michael that wrote a blog for the Howzit team, I'd say about 2 months ago, and it was around about how he found a job, and he actually found his job on Twitter, and he started connecting. So that was quite interesting. I know that South Africans don't use Twitter much, and Twitter is it's not a massive thing here, but it's still very active. And if you want to use it for job searching, it definitely is out there to use. But if it is Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But whatever your social presence is, wherever you are, make sure that it's up to date and that you are using that profile. And if you don't want it to be publicized on a newspaper, then don't be on social media, because people will, and they do check your resume on social media here. The first place they will go to after they've received your resume, or sometimes, as I said earlier, before they even look at your resume, is on LinkedIn. Okay, so if your LinkedIn profile is not up to date, then that's the first place that I'll definitely start, and I'll ensure that it is consistent with what my resume says, to change that. Looking at your resume, make sure that you tailor the resume to every job application, and that's why they have got cover letters. Sometimes people say, you know what, do I need a cover letter? Yes, you do. Many companies say no, it's not necessary, but what the cover letter will help with is that the cover letter will state specifically, it gives you it gives you an extra page of space to describe why you are the ideal candidate for that specific job, so you can get really into detail. Okay, so again, ensure that your resume is up to date. It's got the headlines in, it's got the keywords in that is the same as the job description that you're obviously applying for. Okay, you can highlight your skills in the top third. I've mentioned the top third of your LinkedIn before, and the top third of your resume, and that's when the hybrid resume comes in. Okay, and then use basic language. If it becomes, I'm not saying use, don't put in, if you are highly qualified and you've got specific skills, that you don't put those in. The keywords definitely need to be in, but use understandable language for the system to be able to pass you. Okay, and it's readable, but not so technical that nobody understands what is going on your resume. So the address, I've mentioned that earlier, is kind of like, if you put and that's why I've got address in brackets. It is, as long as your address is on your resume as Canada or Toronto or whatever it is, then you'll find that the system, if it requires for you to be in a specific, it won't necessarily kick you out if it doesn't have that address on. But it will definitely, if it says Toronto and the system says, okay, well, we wanted you to be in Toronto, it will give more increased ranking of your ATS score to say, yes, you tick that box because you've mentioned Toronto, so it'll give you more score on that case. Okay, when we have a look at the research about the company, go and do yourself a favor and have a look at what is happening on the company side itself, on a place like LinkedIn, and on their website. Go and do some research around that company. Go and have a look. It's not simply just going and looking at LinkedIn. That's the first place that you'll start. But if you're really interested in a job and you start going through the system, have have a look on LinkedIn. What's the company doing? You know, how often are they advertising jobs on there? Do they advertise the kind of jobs that you are looking for? What are people within that company saying about the company? A good place to start and have a look at, if you want to look at average salaries or what people are saying about companies, is a website called Glassdoor. Have a look on there. Just see who the connections are within that company. Start connecting with them, start building that relationship. Okay. And then be selective about the company, the amount of jobs that you apply at one company. So I'm not saying, if there are quite a few jobs and you qualify for those jobs and you apply for them, that's fine. But if you're going to apply for 20 or 30 of these jobs, and suddenly this one recruiter gets your resume, but he also is recruiting for the other 20 or 30 jobs, he can see, but this guy he's applying for all these jobs. It means that he's not really, although he passes the ATS perhaps, he's not really you know, qualified to do the jobs, because they have got different skills within those. So be selective about how you apply. Rather do, again, quality versus quantity in this case. Let's just have a look. How many keywords must you add to your resume? With my industry, I can add plus minus 2 pages of of keywords. Andres, so a resume on average is maximum 3 to 4 pages long. So if you're going to add 2 pages of keywords, we've got a problem there. I think you've got a lot of skills to add. I think what you need to do is have a look when you start looking at the comparison of the keywords and seeing what keywords are coming up the most often in that job description. You will ensure that those keywords are within that specific one. Again, if you put your resume up, you should have your top keywords, your top 10 or 20 keywords for your job should be in there in any event. Okay, and that should be woven into a sentence and a readable context. So be sure that you kind of have the top ones of what your application is relevant to for that specific job application. Cliff's asking around the job for either Vancouver or Toronto. You can put both. I would say just put Canada if in that matter. Okay, and it really depends. I think it's not often that the system will ask you about the address. It's just when it says candidates must be based in Toronto, you know, or this is a Toronto-based job, then your application, in that case, you would then, for that specific application, you'll put the address as Toronto. Okay. But one of the most critical things, I think, out of all of that I've said here is that one of the questions that the system says to you is, if it says to you that you must be legally, what is the word, legally able to work in Canada, what does that mean? It means that you have got the legal right to work here. So in other words, do you have permanent residency, or are you a citizen? If you are looking in South Africa and you are looking for a work permit, then the system, if you don't have that legal rights and you require a work permit, it's a very different consideration how you put that in. And that's when you start this whole process of looking at a resume. You would start looking and identifying companies that are friendly towards giving work permits, because not every company is able to provide you with a work permit within Canada. They need to apply through the government to be able to give work permits and LMIAs, and that process is quite a long and laborious process. So not every company, when you apply, even though you've got the skills, they might say, yes, you're great for the job, but if you're not in Canada, then we can't help you. You need to live, and that's also sometimes why they say you need to live in Canada and be legally allowed to work in Canada. So that brings us to the end of our system, and we are literally a minute ahead. So what we are going to look at is, what is the next training system or the next training session that I'm going to be doing. And I'm going to be talking around how to start networking and how LinkedIn can help you. So it will look through the network opportunities, start looking at LinkedIn itself, looking at how to do the research of the company, and just kind of really saying, I've taken one or two of you guys through this system already, where we say, here's LinkedIn. How do I start using LinkedIn? Not just kind of looking for jobs, but how do I start actively participating in LinkedIn, providing information, and start networking and finding those South Africans and finding those people specifically in LinkedIn so that I can start connecting with them. And I'll give you a tip or trick or two around how do you reach out to these people without stalking them. You know, so that's the next training session. We're aiming to have that training session on May the 27th. At the moment, it's not a confirmed date as yet, but if you reach out to me, I'll make sure that I add you onto the list of what we've got. Here's where you can connect to me. It is, again, via my LinkedIn. And please do yourself a favor and follow the Howzit Canada LinkedIn page, where we update regularly and we put the information on the training sessions on there. My company itself, please follow me on Designs Creative Thinking, put some thoughts out there. And if you want to speak to me, info@Howzit is the best way to get hold of me. I'd love to connect. I connect with many people on a daily basis, chatting about their journeys, when they come in, what's happening, you know, just really helping them to settle in Canada and just connecting with everyone that's around here. So it's fabulous. I loved having you guys here.